So you essentially smashed the matrix on the defense industry. We're here in San Diego.
Lovely San Diego.
You just expanded to 65,000 feet of manufacturing space. Tell me how you did that and about this additive manufacturing differentiator of Firestorm.
So we build drones, all different shapes and sizes. The vision was build them really cheap, build them interoperable.
To reduce that manufacturing time from 9 months to 3 weeks.
It should be cheap and easy to use, just like putting an app on your iPhone.
What is an area of frustration in the current defense industrial-based system?
First off, as taxpayers, that is absurd.
How do you maintain that ethos in your life and across your team of continuing to accept risk and maybe challenge the status quo?
You've identified like truly something that as you grow as an organization becomes tougher. I think you lead from the front.
I heard that one key to your success is a trusted advisor that not many people know about.
The secret weapon.
If you had that time machine, would you travel into the future?
I think we're just kind of in the tip of the iceberg of what our products will be used for to solve problems for the warfighter.
I'm Joanna Guy with Booz Ventures. Booz Ventures invests in the most advanced technology in the world. And today I'm excited to interview Dan Magy, co-founder and CEO of Firestorm. Thanks for having me here at the headquarters.
Yep, glad to have you here. Thanks for coming for the Rip and Cutting.
Yeah, absolutely. You just expanded to 65,000 feet of manufacturing space.
Yep.
We're here in San Diego.
Lovely San Diego.
So tell me, San Diego has the highest concentration of military assets in the world.
Yep.
I imagine that's part of the reason you're building here. Are there any other reasons that San Diego is perhaps familiar or well-loved for you personally? And what are you building here?
Okay, so I grew up in San Diego, so I have an affinity for it. Lived in a lot of different parts of the world and also in our country, and made a decision that I wanted to live in a place that had the best weather. That was my first decision, but I actually backed into kind of deep tech involving robotics, and there's really nowhere better than San Diego for a lot of that. We have great universities. We have a ton of graduates that come out of these universities every year. And then we have an incredible defense and robotics infrastructure here that doesn't get talked about enough. Specifically in the drone space, you have General Atomics, Kratos, Shield AI. Hopefully we're going to be, the fourth great drone company out of San Diego here in the near term. But as far as like the talent required to build drones or anything robotic, San Diego is a great place for that. I know I'm kind of jumping now into answering the question that you had before, but what we're building here, we started as a modular multi-mission drone, kind of like what's behind me. And the vision was build them really cheap, build them interoperable so that you don't have to go and like ask the government for $1 million to do a new integration. It should be cheap and easy to use, just like putting an app on your iPhone. And then the business has morphed in the last 18 months into kind of being an advanced manufacturing at the point of need company. So we build drones, right? We build lots of drones, all different shapes and sizes, but we're now also getting into helping solve very critical defense industrial base / manufacturing problems for the DOW and a bunch of our allies.
I heard an incredible proof point around your expeditionary manufacturing capabilities today. And that was around a part that's on the light armored vehicle called the cooling reservoir.
Yep.
And this part typically takes about 9 months to produce for replacement.
Yep.
And can sometimes take up to 2 years to deliver.
Yep.
And when you're thinking about contested logistics and being in an operating environment, that's far too long. So what you did at Firestorm with your X-Cell capability was to reduce that manufacturing time from 9 months to 3 weeks.
Yep.
Tell me how you did that and about this additive manufacturing differentiator of Firestorm.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they think of 3D printers, they think of the desktop 3D printers that you probably saw in a science class or maybe in someone's house. That was kind of like the 10 years ago technology. What we're using now are industrial grade HP 3D printers, okay? It can be kind of difficult to install and temperamental, but what we've solved as a company is how to put them in a 20-foot container and then move them around and deploy them in less than 24 hours. So the original idea was have a distributed manufacturing drone solution in a box that could be taken anywhere in the world and deployed. As we've started to take these into the field and have the end users play with them, quote unquote, right? They started to bring us a plethora of problems to solve that we're stopping either vehicle readiness or even I think we've fixed like 20 other people's drones at this point, or even just prototyping parts. So giving the end user a technology that kind of allows them to solve a problem at the point of need. They really haven't had anything like this. And that's where our exponential growth has really been coming over the last 2 to 3 quarters. Specifically for the item you're talking about, it was pretty interesting. We had an advanced manufacturing group from the Marine Corps come to us with this problem, talk about the timelines you were discussing. First off, as taxpayers, that is absurd. And it shouldn't take you 9 months to make something like this. But we printed a couple use parts, they tested it, and then they took them to a point of need where it was like, we got to install them today so we can run the systems. So you have these systems that cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars that are grounded by a $500 part with a 9-month lead time at a minimum. And so we look at this now as like a system readiness, system availability solution as well. And I think we're just kind of in the tip of the iceberg of what our products will be used for to solve problems for the warfighter.
One of the common themes that I hear when speaking with visionary founders, such as yourself, that you just mentioned was the fact that you kind of light up when you talk about finding problems.
Yeah.
Like just wanting to identify the most problems possible so that you can bring the solution. And clearly that's what you did in this case with the cooling reservoir and thinking about how to expand the additive manufacturing capabilities. What is an area of frustration in the current defense industrial based system and the current government acquisition process that makes you feel like, I found the problems, I actually know how to bring capability, but I can't move fast enough?
I think we're still funding at an incredibly high amount of dollars too many legacy systems. I think war's changed. And I think if we don't adapt, we're going to be in trouble. You see countries in Europe, some of them are totally abandoning the tank. Some of them are keeping it. Like, we have to stop thinking like we're going to control the air. We're going to have the ability to like resupply anywhere in the world. We have to start thinking that our adversaries are incredibly creative. They're incredibly resourceful. The price of computing has fundamentally changed what you can do with the robotics you have available. But that's not quite happening yet. I know this administration is trying really hard to solve some of those problems. I'd say this is one of the most open administrations when it comes to like, I want to go talk to an end user or a customer and be like, hey, how can I help you solve a problem? They're asking for that. But I mean, I just saw Secretary of the Army Driscoll say he's frustrated by the amount of bureaucracy he feels like he still has to cut to start getting modern solutions into the end user's hands.
Well, a lot of it seems to come down to culture. And I think in your corner of the world and in your organization, you paint the imperative so clearly. And even my experience here today on your manufacturing floor, your team is remarkable. They move so fast. And I mean, they literally move fast. Like, they are running around the floor. And when I ask Ailish and Adrian and Dwayne, like, what's causing you to move so fast? They say there's not enough hours in the day to complete the mission.
Yeah.
How do you instill that culture in your team of this mission imperative and really keeping that momentum and energy in your team culture?
I think you lead from the front. I think I'm also kind of wired differently from other people where this doesn't feel like work. Do you know what I mean? And if something doesn't feel like work, then you'll put even more effort and hours into it because, again, it's something you enjoy doing. And for us, that is, kind of what you identified earlier, solving big problems. I've just always been wired that way. And now I have an outlet and an understanding of how to maneuver in a complicated kind of ecosystem, which is defense. And so we're really trying to bring the best technologies at a low cost to the warfighter and hopefully aid in, not only our national defense, but allies around the world that share the same value cultures as we do.
I want to ask you about the influx of capital to the defense industrial base. That has changed in the last couple of years. We've seen a major influx of capital. Why do you think, and companies like Booz Allen Ventures, we recently upsized our fund to $300 million, and we are aggressively investing in this technology.
Yep.
How do you think about that as a founder? And do you think that capital is going to stay, or that the government really needs to take swift action to change the acquisition model to keep the incentives aligned?
You have to do that first, right? Government needs to this is free chicken, $70 billion of free chicken, not taxpayer money. So we need to figure out how to get companies revenue so that they can continue to grow and build products and raise more money, right? But I do think that you've seen two distinct things happening that's causing this shift. First is the war in Ukraine is actually like fundamentally changed people's willingness to invest in defense. And I think you mirror that with like the rise of kind of Chinese nationalism. So now people are like, okay, our way of, life in the West is kind of under assault. And then the second thing I think that's happening is that like OpenAI, Perplexity, they're crushing SaaS businesses. So you have people who have capital they need to return, and they're desperately looking for new places to put it. We talk about this collectively as a bunch of us founders, and then a bunch of, even on my board, I would say, like, I think there are folks that are kind of like defense tourists that are out there. What I try and help as many, early stage or young founders as possible, because I didn't have that opportunity getting into defense when there was like 4 funded companies. And one of the things the piece of advice I give them is like, 1, try and find patient capital. 2, go find a prime to work with. Having a prime on your cap table is truly a force multiplier if you know how to use them. I mean, we just spent hours going through like, what's the strategy going to be? And then the third thing is go find a lobbyist, right? I'm glad Trey Stevens is finally saying it at his talks. It's the first thing he says, like, what do you need to do when you start a defense company? First person you hire is a lobbyist. So, you only learn this stuff by kind of getting your reps in and kind of getting punched in the face, I'd say. But yeah, I do think that there might be a little bit of a defense winter coming, because it is very hard to build a company in the space if you don't understand what's really required. And it's teaming with bigger and smaller companies than you. And it is helping the end user get product in their hands. And a lot of times that's through lobbying.
And on that point around lobbying, do you think that the government relations function within a startup can actually provide near-term return, or do you think it's more around shaping the longer-term narrative?
First dollar we spent our money on was on lobbying, and we've been able to program in quite a bit of money. We have end users who you would not believe if they said they were broke, they're broke, and they want our systems. So we make sure we tie congressional support to getting the warfighter the systems they need.
Yeah.
And then, of course, helping create the requirement and palm cycles for, POR stuff.
Well, you were mentioning that you broke the matrix. You essentially smashed the matrix on the defense industry early on. So where did you gain the confidence? So you mentioned you didn't have a mentor, like no one was showing you the roadmap. So how did that happen?
I think for better or worse, I don't ever feel like something is impossible, to do. And so the phrase I use as I've gotten older is the Bruce Lee phrase, be water. So there's always going to be rocks in your way, just move around them. I also had to train myself over kind of 15 years of being an entrepreneur to not get too high or too low. And it's something I actually need to work on now, is we need to do a better job celebrating wins. But I'm just like, all right, cool guys, good win, got a contract. Next one. But I realized I didn't have these mentors. And so I actively went and started to find those type of folks. And there, it ended up being a number of older folks who are running multi-billion-dollar defense companies or had run multi-billion-dollar defense companies, became really good and valuable sounding boards for me, truly. And there wasn't really a playbook for us to understand how to do this a couple of years ago, and or 10 years ago. We had to kind of figure it out as we went. And then I'll also say this: one of the key things for building a defense startup was finding, you go have 1,000 conversations and maybe 5 of them actually matter, but finding those kind of pockets of resistance or the radicals within the DoD who truly want to bring new technologies in and make changes, they will also help kind of teach you the ropes. And I was lucky enough to find a couple of those at Naval Special Warfare here in Coronado who taught us the way. And that was a really special time. It's just 2016. I mean, Citadel, my counter-UAS company I had founded, was there. Shield AI started at the same time. Another one of your portcos, Edgy Bees, Elroy Air. And Naval Special Warfare was like, we need to bring in new technology to go fight ISIS. And they went out of their way to go find small companies. It was a really, really cool and special time. So I wouldn't say like there was one kind of part of it. It was kind of a collective, like, don't give up, just keep talking to people and figure out your way around these problems.
Well, I heard that one key to your success is a trusted advisor that not many people know about.
Okay.
And even though we're in an unclassified environment here, I do want to ask about him. And I'm hoping to get the ground truth for you on this.
Yeah, I have a good idea who this advisor is. Keep going.
So I want you to tell me about Walter.
Yep. Walter is the secret weapon. He is a 100-pound St. Bernard. He doesn't have the normal St. Bernard coloring. He wears mascara or eyeliner, kind of looks like David Bowie. But Walter's with me through thick and thin.
I saw him on a Teams call.
Oh yeah.
I see him in the office.
Oh yeah. He loves to hang out, and he's kind of the Firestorm secret weapon.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Well, take me back now to Dan as a kid.
Okay.
And tell me what sparked creativity for you at that age, because I know creativity you talk about a lot, and it's an important aspect of your work here.
Yeah.
So little Dan, like what were you thinking about? What was on the horizon for you?
I think I was always a dreamer, honestly. Like I still like will get lost in my thoughts all the time. But a big part of it I now attribute to reading. I read voraciously, and I have since I was a kid. History, sci-fi, regular culture books. I don't know. I try and just consume everything. And as adults, when we have less time in our day, I'd say the advent of Audible has allowed me to like almost triple my consumption of like information. I think that, but back to being Dan as a kid, I loved Legos. I'm not an engineer. I'm a history poli-sci major, right? I've liked doing stuff with my hands my whole life. But also just thinking through like, what are big problems we can solve? I've kind of always been that way. You know what I mean?
Okay, so rapid fire, sci-fi book that inspired you the most, and first thing you remember building.
I'll give you a modern sci-fi book. It's actually written by a guy named Mick Ryan. He basically helped Australia rewrite their entire defense posture over the last 3 years. It's called White Sun War, and it's about a war in Taiwan, I think before 2030, but it's all about the use of robots. Okay, so really timely for our conversation. Then the first thing I built as a kid, I don't know, I just had like, I wouldn't say acres, but I had just tables full of Legos. So I'd build pirate ships, forts, all of that stuff. And I think that we didn't have cable as a kid either. That was actually pretty important as well. So I was then forced to do like a lot of other things, I think, where you kind of can be lost in your own thoughts and let your brain develop in a natural way.
And as an adult, now I know you're actually on the San Diego Theater Board.
I am.
And that you love theater and art. So what type of theater and art inspires you, and how does that creativity impact your work and leadership?
I just think that there's a lot of interesting ideas and thoughts out there. And I try and expose myself to as many different ideas as possible, because you never know where you're going to get inspiration. I also think it takes an incredible amount of bravery to get on a stage in front of thousands of people and perform, not for like 1 minute or 2 minutes, but for hours. And San Diego's blessed to have a Broadway-sized theater. I don't know how to explain it, but we get a lot of shows from Broadway here, which is great. And so I just love seeing people kind of go out there and put it all on the line and sing to their heart's content. So what's my favorite show? I'm going to be cliche and say I really, really enjoyed seeing Wicked, but Moulin Rouge was also incredible.
Two of my favorites as well. I could just listen to the Wicked album on repeat constantly.
What's your favorite?
And often do.
Yeah, what's your favorite? Give us one of yours.
I mean, Wicked is in my top for sure. I also love Spring Awakening.
Okay.
It's beautiful, a little bit lesser known, but it was kind of at the time that musical theater was very formative for me. I actually studied music.
Okay.
So this is really resonant. And I think there's a really cool convergence of the impact of humanity, and you're building robots, right? And I think oftentimes people are so focused on the tech, but what are we building for at the end of the day? It's so that our entire species and world can preserve and flourish, right?
1,000%. And
Yeah.
having spent time in a place like China, you say the wrong thing, they turn your internet off for like weeks.
Mhm.
That's just crazy and like antithetical to like everything I think, we should be wanting as a society. And so, what you enjoy on the theater stage, you might not be able to enjoy it if you don't have the same kind of rights and freedoms that we are lucky enough to enjoy in this country. And that's one of the things that definitely motivates me.
Absolutely. And I actually think our American culture is a huge strategic advantage.
1,000%. The whole world looks at America as like kind of a cultural lighthouse, right? So you want to we should be doing everything we can to maintain that.
So on the books, really
Yep.
quickly, have you read The Accidental Time Machine?
I have not. I'll put that on my list.
You're going to love it. And the basic premise, without giving too much away, is that a physicist at MIT creates a machine that accidentally causes him to time travel, but only into the future.
Okay.
And only exponentially into the
Boy.
future.
Okay.
So all the things that entails. So my question for you is, if you had that time machine, would you travel into the future? And if so, how far would you go?
I wouldn't go. I would stay here and I would kind of enjoy what we have. And I would be thinking about what the future could be.
Mm.
It's probably not the answer you wanted, but I think that I could see how you'd want to go. I think we got a great thing going right now.
No, it's an answer that tells me more about you. And it kind of makes me wonder, do you believe that we kind of have free will and the ability to continue to shape? So I guess, are you deterministic, or it sounds like no, there's still a lot of potentialities out there that we're shaping right now?
Yeah, in my brain, like your world and your life is a game. And if you play it and you're willing to take risks, like 99% of the population is afraid to take risks. It is incredible. And I think, I don't remember the Latin translation anywhere, but like fortune does favor the brave or the bold, however you want to translate it. And a lot of that's based around taking risks. So if you take risks, if you try new things, I think you'll be able to kind of shape your destiny in a way that like, if you just plod along and do the same thing every single day, you won't be able to do.
How do you maintain that ethos in your life and across your team of continuing to accept risk and maybe challenge the status quo?
Totally. It's super hard as you get bigger. You've identified like truly something that as you grow as an organization becomes tougher. So you have to reinforce it constantly. We have all hands every week. We talk about what's the most important thing. You want to take risks. You want to take calculated risks. But the beauty of a startup as opposed to working at a big company is, let's say at a big company, you can make 2 decisions in a day. At a startup, you can make 10 decisions in a day. And if every decision is binary, so it either works or it doesn't, if you make 2 at a day at a big company, so maybe you get 1 correct decision a day. At a startup, if you take 10, there's a chance you get, 5 correct decisions in a way. So basically, if we push that ethos of like failing fast, moving forward, constantly, and like honestly listening to feedback for where we think our customers can go, we're going to continue to be a really incredible place to work at. What's been really special over the last couple months is a number of folks have left later stage, defense startups or big companies to come join us on our mission. And I think that's really telling of our culture and how we want to go tackle these problems.
I can feel it. It's incredibly energizing being here. I'm going to give you another opportunity to time travel.
Okay.
Okay. But this time you get to go backward.
Okay.
And give advice to your younger self.
Sure.
Are you doing it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a family where my parents went to the same job and they still work. They love to work every single day. You know what I mean? Same office, same job. And I was like, oh, I'll go be a lawyer because I did speech and debate in high school and I played sports. So I don't mind arguing with people. And what I've learned now is to turn that into kind of storytelling. But what I would tell myself back then is like, at least go get a certificate in project management, right? Because studying a political science and history is great. I am a strong believer in like the need for liberal arts to have you be able to think creatively as opposed to like in a very engineering type approach. But that is a skill that I wish I would have because it'd probably make me a little bit more organized.
Well, that's music to my ears, no pun intended there. But I think it's also going to be an important differentiator for humans against AI.
Totally.
Is our ability to problem solve in this multifaceted, multidisciplinary way.
I totally agree.
What's one piece of advice that you have for young entrepreneurs?
I don't have one, I have two. One is be resilient, right? So whatever your analogy is, be water, move around your obstacles, or, the one in my brain is always like, you're on a boat or you're on a surfboard, there's going to be big waves, small waves. Stay like in the boat, right? And then the second thing is keep reaching out to people. There are folks who've been through it who will give you time and help. You just have to find the right folks.
Well, I hope to see that momentum and resurgence across our industrial base. I think we're in an exciting time right now as well, too. You're shaping the future.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
Look forward to the next one.
Yeah, awesome.